All right, awesome. Thank you so much for having us today. Thank you, ProductTank, GitHub, and Storytel. I'm excited to be here. My name is Jessica Hammond, and we're here to talk about the product leaders and the candidate market fit. I've done a few things, founded a few things, building an agentic and a generative AI. I'm a recovering tech product executive, and I am also the co-organizer for Data for AI. We do a monthly meetup somewhere here in San Francisco, most months. Sometimes it's in the South Bay. And we do deep dives in kind of data engineering, data science, open source content. Mentor, speaker, friend. That QR code will take you to my LinkedIn. Please feel free to tap in. If you have questions, feelings, thoughts, so on, I'm always available. Love to hear from you. So for the last decade, approaching a decade, I've been building software and process management tool software for retained executive search professionals globally. I was the head of product and engineering at Clockwork, which is one of the generally top 2, maybe top 4 process management tools for retained executive search in the world. I've supported firms from Cielo, Teneo, Caliber One, Diversa, SPMB, so on, in building a tool that supports their unique process for retained executive search. And then last March, I was laid off. I immediately joined a JSC. I became part of the Never Search Alone community, and I volunteered to be the moderator of my group, 1147. And we're still running. Quick question, how many of the folks that are here by way of a Never Search Alone community or JSC? Okay, a few. Sidebar? Okay. Product Leader Summit? Okay. And then lastly, ProductTank. Okay, good to know. Also, really quickly, level, seniority. IC manager. Okay. Director. Okay, folks. V level. Okay, and C level. Awesome. All right, beautiful. I was just curious, speakers also, or panelists also were curious about where people were falling across that spectrum. So, Never Search Alone is a free community built by Phil Terry in order to help folks in transition, right? You don't have to actually be out of a job to be a participant in the Never Search Alone community. This is directly from their website. And what's really interesting, which stuck really hard with me right out of the gate, was the candidate market fit. Well, I'm in product. Product market fit is what we do all day, right? And so candidate market fit really struck a chord with me. And as I went through the process of finding my next role and diving deep into my candidate market fit, I ended up, part of that process is speaking to recruiters, talking to folks who are in the market, placing candidates, and understanding how you are perceived by them, right? For me, I had the gift of being able to pick up the phone and call partners at executive search firms and say, hey, how do I look to you? You know, how am I perceived in the market? How can I better shape what it is that I want and how I present myself for what the market needs and or demands in this moment? Well, what I learned actually were a lot of things. I went through a number of iterations with my candidate market fit. I definitely leaned into the Job Search Council. I definitely leaned into my network. And then why we're here today is because of that last piece, right? Being of service. All of us have something that can help somebody else. And when we give freely, what has been so freely given to us, we're buying a little bit of insurance for a better life later. At least that's how I see it. And so hopefully I've bought enough insurance for a good little while here, right? This is the 3rd installment of the Product Leaders in the Candidate Market Fit. I did the first one at my building in Soma last May, and then we did another one in October, and now we're here at GitHub. Wow, with ProductTank SF. I think that's pretty radical. The whole point, though, is that when thinking about executive search, thinking about the transition that a lot of folks are in, what I realized when I hit the market last year was like, there's a bunch of really distinguished, experienced product leaders that were on the market for 6, 12, 18 months sometimes, and I was shocked by that because I'm like, how am I going to compete with this? That's crazy. But what they didn't understand was something that I had, which I understood intimately because I had been building for this market, this black box, for dang near a decade. And so that's what grew this particular opportunity. Let's pull back the curtain. Let's talk a little bit about the market. Let's talk a little bit about executive search. What does it mean to be an executive search professional? What information do they have that we would like to know a little bit more about? And how can we kind of help that bridge between even folks that have worked with executive search professionals may not completely understand the back inner workings of the search firm, and you're not going to figure that out today. I'm going to promise you that. However, there could be a little bit more elucidation into what the market looks like, executive search in general, and some of the expertise that these folks get to see every day, right? We're also here in San Francisco with ProductTank SF, and there's a huge amount of AI going on in the world and going on in the market, right? So part of it is trepidation, like, will AI take my job? Part of it is, am I skilled properly for the next job? And what I've seen as a builder of AI, like I literally ship code, and I build with AI, I build agentic solutions. Part of that data for AI side of my world is also just about being hyper familiar with the space. Some of the things that you can bank on for product leadership and how AI will impact it are some of just these very simple things here. Enhanced data analysis and decision making, automation of routine tasks, streamlined product development, shifting focus to strategic thinking. Get all that rote work, all of that stuff that used to take your time managing databases and managing spreadsheets and so on, out of your purview and actually be able to focus in on some of the more creative stuff that AI just can't do for you. Enhanced collaboration and communication. AI can make that a lot easier for us. And then, of course, digital workers. And that's the agentic component, right? So some of the stuff that we used to have to do, if it's very process-orientated, doesn't require too much creative thought, you will see agents come out for that if they're not already in existence today. What does that mean for evolving skill set? What I'm seeing is the AI literacy, understanding what the landscape looks like, strategic application of AI, right? Where is it best suited for AI to solve this problem as it relates to product, as it relates to product leadership, as it relates to serving our users? There's a bunch of services, software out there that already integrate AI, and like we can bank on that, but making sure that we're using those pieces strategically in order to accomplish our ultimate goal, right, is a big piece of that. Ethical considerations, understanding the limitations of AI and kind of where the risks are. Continuous learning. AI changes fast, right? Like I'm saying AI, and that's like there's so many different sectors within just those two letters, right? So understanding that, pick a lane. You can just, if you're not as familiar, pick a lane, start there, Figure out that area and then let that move to the right, move to the left as you pick up more domain knowledge, in essence. But that's only a precursor to why we're here. Why we're actually here is to hear from Yasi and Vidur on executive search. And I have 4 questions. They're rather simple. And they'll kick it off for us, and then we'll open it up for folks here if you have questions. One of which is, what does the landscape of executive search look like today for product leaders? And I will pass this mic around. And I'll actually first let both of our esteemed guests here introduce themselves, and then we can get into our questions. Please, Yasi.
Hi, everyone. My name is Yasi Bayani. I have been product exec and leader turned to recruiter, and also we do consulting, product and AI consulting for our clients. I was early employee at Fitbit. I lead all of our software experiences in my last role. I was part of Livongo Teladoc, leading mental health product line there. And in my last role at Clio, I was leading product and marketing. And then I decided that I wanted to start Raya. Initially started with product and AI consulting, but then when we put the strategy in place, people are like, oh, can you help us to execute? Can you come internal? And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to work with portfolio of companies. I helped the initial teams and companies to build their leadership teams, and that's how I got into executive recruiting. But I also saw a gap and opportunity for many reasons, happy to go through them, to do better, both for the candidates and also for companies. We were talking about that. And that's how I also decided to kick off that arm of our business. Excited to be here.
Hi, my name is Vidar Dewan. I've been doing executive search for product and engineering leaders for about 10 years now. I got my start at Diversa Partners, building out their product and engineering practice here in San Francisco when they were about a less than 30-person firm. But I've been doing search specifically for venture-backed startups ever since Diversa, now at Artisanal for the last 5 years, and our firm was founded about 6 years ago to specifically focus on Series B through Series D stage, B2B, SaaS-backed, VC-backed companies. We tend to work with some of the highest growth companies out there. We've now, in the last 5 years, expanded things to doing like B2B2C companies. We work with companies like Notion and Airtable, and now consumer companies like DoorDash. So we've done even public companies now too. But most of my work tends to be Series A, Series B, Series C stage, head of product, VP product, CPO searches. So I'm also excited to be here.
Thank you both. Okay, so just to kick it off, what are you seeing in the market right now? If folks have been in the search for a while, or if folks are just entering a search, or if they're not in a search but they're thinking about making a move, what kind of insights do you have on what you're seeing in search today?
Yeah, I think first of all, we were just talking about that last time we were here in October, right before election. There was still a lot of kind of, I say, contraction in the market. People were just holding off to see what's going to happen. There are not as many roles open, and we kind of, both of us, at least in our side, we saw a pretty good amount of traction, and people start feeling confident after the election was done. And I would say also partially the end of the year, a lot of companies did their annual planning, their budgets got approved, so more roles open up December, and I think it just continues. I see more and more companies opening up roles. A lot of our focus are on leadership roles, so that's where I know that most of the roles open up. That's where I'm kind of watching and having the best pulse of the market. On the IC side, I don't know, but I'm also assuming is the same. At least a good news is like more number of roles open up at the IC level, generally speaking, for companies versus, executive or leadership roles that are one, for each function within the company. So they're a lot more limited. Yes, there's still layoffs happening. Large companies are shifting some of their budgets and focus. I think a lot of the companies are probably hiring people with AI skills. I feel like about 2 years ago when I initially started, a lot of companies were kind of thinking about AI, ML background and product people who have built AI-driven products as a nice to have. Now I see with a lot of our roles coming, it's a must-have. They're looking for a specific type of, skills. So I really encourage people to start kind of getting their hands dirty. We can talk about that more, but that is becoming more and more of a requirement. And I feel like that the roles are opening up, but they're kind of shifting, if that makes sense, in terms of skills required.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think for whatever reason, the election changed things. As soon as that wrapped up, we saw a big spike in searches come through. I think what we're seeing in a couple of different things. I think there's some maturing that's happening in startups that were funded into seed Series A about a year ago, 2 years ago, and now you're seeing a bunch of them now hit 30, 40, 50, in some cases 100 million ARR. And a lot of them are now starting to think about maturing processes, organizations, and now actually full bore hiring too. What's interesting is last quarter, we saw a big spike in engineering searches more so than product searches, which makes me believe that product searches probably in the next quarter are going to be even more prevalent than they were in the past quarter or so, just because they're so closely linked in proportion. So we're still seeing a ton early stages, more growth stage company hiring as well, and it's sector agnostic. I mean, obviously everything is like in AI, we're seeing a bunch of that, but a lot of vertical specific companies are also hiring. Like there's been like huge spike in health tech companies specifically. I think Yasi, you called it in October, that was a big, and we're seeing it now too. And then just vertical SaaS as a whole, like that, those two specific sectors have been, we've been seeing a lot of activity in.
Awesome, thank you both for that. And as a curiosity, we've had some grumblings around about the rise of the CPTO. Have you guys seen much of that? And if the rise of the CPTO is real, what does that mean for a non-technical product leader? Or does that mean anything for a non-technical product leader? Yeah.
It's definitely on the rise. It has been. I think everything was so matrixed out, and it was until Amazon went through the GM model. There's a couple companies like Block and Square that have done that as well, and all of them actually have gone back to functional reporting too. They're no longer GM models either. But oddly enough, we are seeing more CPTO searches here and there. I don't think not having a technical background is going to hold it against you, frankly, because 9 times out of 10, I see the CPTO roles, they're looking for a big P and a little E. So they're usually looking for somebody that understands how to manage engineering, can either hire a strong number 2 in engineering, but still manage the roadmap and strategy, and that's where the strength is at. So you're going to have to be technical enough to work with engineering. Most of the time, you will have to have demonstrated that you have owned engineering or have references vouch to the fact that you have the capability to do that. Typically, CPTO searches, I see that when they're usually growth stage companies, public companies. It's rare for me to go to search the market for a Series A, B, even C stage company looking for a CPTO. And those are case by case. They happen sometimes if there's like an opening or the founder who has been leading product or engineering in that case just doesn't want to be in an executive capacity, wants to be in IC. Those are case by case. But if you look at the bulk of the CPTO searches we've done and filled, they tend to be in the later stages of startups or public companies.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I would say a few additional things to think about. First of all, I think the product and engineering and design are getting closer and closer in terms of function. Now with a lot of AI tools and fast prototyping, the expectation is that the same person potentially could do a lot of same thing, whatever that means. I've been having conversation with a few CPOs, and we all are kind of thinking about what the future would look like, and not far future. We're talking about 12 months, 18 months out. Will there be less ratio of engineers to product people or vice versa? It's going to be an interesting question. Are those two roles kind of going to collide into each same? Even at the IC level, right? We are seeing in a large companies, middle management is shrinking, right? So there are a lot of changes happening. And I think with all that, no matter what level anyone thinking about, the most important thing is, yes, you don't need to have engineering and technical background, but you need to be technical. And you need to have the language down, and you need to be able to utilize AI tools. And you need to not only be able to, even if you're an engineer, you need to be able to have a reason and understanding of business use cases of why you need to prototype certain things, why you need to use certain technology to bring product to market. And if you're a product person, you need to be able to comfortable enough to use some of these tools, build prototype, bring your use cases to the market. The time to do development and testing is decreasing so much with this prototyping capabilities, and the expectation is again, product design, engineering, almost be able to do a lot of the same thing. Okay, so think about that concept, and whatever gap you have in that area, I really encourage you to fill it. If you're more technical, try to have better sense of the business as a whole, and if you're a more business-driven, customer-driven product person, really get comfortable to be more technical. And again, you don't need to be an engineering. And one good news I always try to tell people is an interesting point, actually, someone in one of the panels I was hosting mentioned is, yes, maybe the best time to become an AI engineer or technical person or AI person was 15 years ago, get a PhD in ML. in Stanford. But guess what? Most of the people didn't do that, right? This is the second best time still to become AI person. So those of us who really get their hands dirty and learn as fast as possible will be the one that have really interesting careers ahead, especially in product engineering, but honestly, any role. I feel like things are changing every function, every company so rapidly. So just get comfortable with that and learn that, and the rest will kind of follow.
Awesome, thank you. And moving along a little bit, so we're talking, that was a little bit about function across departments, or the kind of like the fusion of departments. But what about a product leader that has a generalist experience versus a niche experience? Do you find that when you're looking for new product leaders in general, across the board, is a generalist-based experience equally as valuable as maybe a niche industry-based experience when you're hiring or when you're helping the place?
I'm happy to start there. I think they both have their own time and space, and depending on the need and how the company is trying to build their expertise. For instance, some of our roles, they have very, very specific industry and niche background requirement. And that's what they need. That's how they kind of the gaps in their teams are. There's some other ones that come in that actually are more generalists, you can kind of argue, right? So I actually think even at the leadership level, both could still make sense. But product is one of those functions that the industry expertise and market understanding and customer understanding actually is pretty important. So I would say like try to gain some of that market expertise and niche expertise, if you will. But still, I've seen people even at the senior level switch from one kind of category to another, and they're extremely successful. Or they get hired more as a generalist and then kind of go above the rank. So either one could work, honestly.
Yeah, I would second that. I think the best way to put it is like small fish, big pond, big fish, small pond. If you're super, super specialized, like you're probably not going to have like 15, 20 different recruiting emails in your inbox because there's just not many of those roles or companies out there. But that being said, like you will be more marketable for that next company that comes around that's looking for that specific skill set. Other way around, like if you are very generalized, like you're going to be competing against a lot of other product leaders who are also generalized. So pick your poison in that sense. I absolutely agree with Yassi's take that you can switch around. I think you do want some cohesion in your story. There has to be, and ideally cohesion with success. Those two things together are very important if you're going from something specialized to generalized or vice versa. So
thank you. You actually just said made a really interesting comment. There needs to be some cohesion in your story. And so I think that when we're actually kind of take back a couple steps, the candidate market fit, like understanding that is a good place to start when you're talking about transitions, certainly, but the communication of that is in your story. And so how would you suggest candidates who are in transition or would like to be in transition communicate their story such that they're actually found by you? And then when they do talk to you, how do they communicate that story? What are some maybe gotchas or some really good pointers on how to do that well?
I mean, the question of like how you're found by me, usually I'm hunting for you. So like you've got to have a cohesive story on your LinkedIn page or something. That's the best way to put it. I think the better way to answer is like, how do you tell your story when you are in front of a recruiter or interviewer? It's like kind of understanding the fundamentals of your background. What are you really good at? And why you made those moves and how those moves kind of made sense. Like you're not going to go from, working at a super technical infrastructure tool to now being the product manager for the next hot consumer application, likely, right? There's usually some sort of adjacency that you're jumping into. So having a story there, why it made sense and how your skill set's applied is usually really important for recruiters to kind of understand, like, how do I map your career? How do I understand how you think? How do you see yourself fit into different contexts, different companies? And I think it's important to highlight the fact of like why you made that switch. And again, the fundamentals, because that keys to me, like I'm not going to bucket you in one specific domain or another if you're able to tell me like here are the different things I'm really good at, here are the different things I can apply myself into, here are the fundamentals of why that makes sense, and that story is cohesive.
Beautiful. Thank you. It's helpful.
Yeah, I answer this in a couple of ways to maybe hopefully help everyone. First of all, as you saw Vidor speaking, he's say, I bucket people. So recruiters like us, like people like executive recruiters or recruiters at any level, any shape and form, they're just like VCs. They try to recognize pattern and then bucket people. It's like, okay, this is like my SaaS enterprise product person. This is my consumer product person, even though maybe they not exactly say that. But sometimes they may ask you, are you more B2B person or B2C? Are you SaaS enterprise or something else, right? So that's how they're trying to do. And they have 30 seconds when they're looking at their resume to make that decision and bucket you. And they have maybe at best 30 minutes when they're talking to you to make those decisions, right? And they are trying to see, can you succeed in my client's role or not? Will you be that person I want to bet on you or not? That's what they're kind of in their head they're thinking about. So first of all, understanding that is really important. You have 30 seconds to make that impression on the paper. You have 30 minutes to make that impression when you're talking with a recruiter, either within the company or firms like us that the clients hire. What's important is, first of all, I tell every candidate, get your 5-minute elevator pitch down. Super important. Like you ask about the storytelling. Yeah. First of all, really think, reflect, and say, what is my story? Who do I want to be? Who am I and who do I want to be? And get that story down, okay? What are you interested in? What are you good at? What are you not good at, right? And if you have gaps that you wanted to fill them, make sure you fill them, right? And I could argue that go with your strength or go with, filling your weaknesses. Both strategies could work for different people. Just make sure which one you want to pick. Do you want to lead with your strength if you're not technical or if you're not good in managing people? Or do you want to fill your gaps and make sure you kind of have a more well-rounded profile? Get your story down with yourself. Practice your story. Have your friends interview you. Have your colleagues interview you and ask them to give you feedback on the impressions they had when they talk with you. Okay, because by the time you get someone like us or a recruiter within a company talk to you, you have already put so much effort and the chances are really low to have these calls, right? So you want to nail it. So you don't want to learn on that call to do your 5-minute elevator pitch, right? Or tell your story or stumble, not be able to really drive the message home. So really practice that. And the third thing is like make sure on your resume and on your LinkedIn profile, they are all very cohesive. And it's very hard because I know like we also recommend people when they apply for jobs, make sure they adjust it to the job that they're applying for. That's less relevant for executive roles because again, executives usually are reached out to by the headhunters. But for the other roles, you still are submitting resume. But anyways, it's a fine balance between making sure things are customized for that particular role, but also is cohesive across your story and your profile and everywhere that you have presence, okay? And one thing I would say is like, don't apply to things and expect people to get back to you. There are thousands of applications for any role that even when they're recruiters like us, we do even our VP level roles, even though they're confidential searches, we sometimes post them on our LinkedIn. So hundreds and thousands of people apply for those roles. Not only for us, for many other companies is even worse, right? So make sure you find a decision maker that can pay attention to your profile. That's why I always tell people don't spray and pray. Really be strategic about your story and where you want to land. That's why it's much better to really think hard about who you are, where your strengths are. Are you a small company person, big company? Where do you want to be from size and category perspective? And be very, very strategic. You probably have a lot more chances of success to narrow down your search and make sure your resume land on the desk of the hiring manager or a right recruiter with ideally some strong referrals, rather than applying to 100 jobs, even though sometimes that feels like counterintuitive. But I think that's the best way, and they all are strategic, like from knowing who you are all the way to kind of craft your story, both on the paper and verbally, and then make sure strategically you approach the right companies and decision makers.
Thank you so much for that. I have one final question before we open it up, and it's the elephant in the room. It's the AI, right? So of the roles that you are actually working on currently or recently, what percentage of them have AI in the title? And then when you're even hiring for generalist roles or in general across the board, what skill sets are actually required that are involving AI, right? So like not only is it just like AI specific, but then also the expectation of some of those skill sets that have direct involvement with AI.
To answer your question of how many companies we've worked with, the percentage that are in AI or have AI attached to it, 30%, probably roughly 40% in that range. It's not an overwhelming majority yet, and I think that kind of speaks about the space and maturity there and where they're at a size and stage. I think it really depends as far as like the skill set. It depends where that company is domain-wise and what they're building and where in the AI stack they are. If they're touching a foundational model, are they building a model? Do they have researchers? Are they working with researchers? Is it very application heavy? Is it machine learning operations instead? Is it an infrastructure developer? It really depends. So the best way to think about it is like the company that is servicing. So if it's like a marketing AI company that's specific for automating marketing solutions or whatever, your skill set's probably going to have to be building products for the go-to-market persona. So I would think of it in terms of personas. The one specific type of company that does require a specific skill set is anything you do with research or researchers or foundational models or touching models or anything between. That one's pretty tricky. There aren't not a lot of product leaders and managers out there that have had to work with research, especially outside of the large hyperscaler companies. They're just not out there. And so the skill set that's being asked of these folks is a lot, which is like, hey, we're a Series A, Series B stage startup. We have our own foundation model, or we're really close to it. We got researchers on the team. We need somebody that has seen this size and stage of company before and knows how to work with researchers, because research is not deterministic, and you're trying to build a roadmap on top of that. How do you marry those two things together? Oh, by the way, you're trying to sell to an enterprise and like have that roadmap planned out for them. So it's a whole song and dance there that a lot of that skill set does not exist in mass yet. And so that is something I keep hearing over and over again, which is like, does this person know how to work with research? Is this person technical enough, to Yassi's point? You don't need to come from a CS background to get there. I've placed executives in this place, and I've seen plenty of people move on to this where they themselves have started reading research papers to get to that level and really have read the fundamental papers. Like, attention is all you need to really understand, like, how do researchers talk? How do they position these things? How do these things kind of come to be? So specifically for AI, that's where I'm seeing a lot of. Generally speaking, I think you're going to have some fluency in it. Like, you may not need to have built a product in AI before, but just showing that you're up to date on what the latest is. Maybe you've hacked together a project on the side. Like, that is important to show in many of these cases. If you're interviewing at like your traditional B2B SaaS company that's doing like ERP software or something, maybe that's less so important. So make sure you tailor your pitch to whatever company you're working with. But anything in the early stages now is like, generally you're going to have some sort of fluency there, whether you're going as far as like reading research papers, building and hacking projects together, to just having fluency of understanding what's going on in the space and how the different companies and products fit together.
Awesome.
Yeah, for us, slightly different. I think from the client breakout perspective, I would say like 60% of our clients are AI-based companies now. A lot of the product roles do require AI, even though that's not part of the actual job description. I see where candidates go to interview, they will get tested on AI ML questions. So that's at least what we're seeing on our end. And then, but there are like other roles like marketing, which I feel like you still could do things like you were doing them 2 years ago, and still is very relevant. I feel like they haven't as much adopted AI tools. Of course, they prefer people who have done some of those implementation and know how to bring some new tools to the marketing, but it's not necessary as much as I see in the product. And I feel like even 2 years ago, again, 18 months ago, that would have been nice to have for product people, some of the AI capabilities. Expectation is at this point for some of the searches that people have done some AI tools at this point, even though it hasn't been at scale or hasn't been as much successful, but the familiarity and implementation of some of the AI products and features are becoming important. Some of these are very high profile companies and searches. I would say that. I wouldn't say every single product role will require that. But I would encourage people to really try to build stuff. If you're in the companies, try to position yourself and be that champion of AI within your company. If you're not in the company and you're looking to get into the next roles, I actually think even IC roles I'm seeing that they are requiring some of those capabilities. So take some courses, Maven courses or other courses, build some portfolio of projects that you have. And again, more than anything, you mentioned that to the language, the research papers, there's so much that we all can learn and do to kind of keep ourselves up to date. So I would really encourage to do that, to start building your portfolio. If not even today, it's almost like a must-have. In 18 months from now, it will become a must-have, so you wanted to kind of get ahead of the curve.
Amazing. Thank you both so very much. I think it's time for us to open it up. Are there any folks that have questions for our panelists today? Any question at all? Let's go right here, and then we can go in the back.
Thank you. Hi, thank you. Thank you, Jessica, Yassi, and Vidur. So I wanted to ask you, to the point that you just made, what are some good courses that you would recommend for some of us that are curious?
Yeah, I actually have full transparency, partnership with Maven, and I dug into a lot of their AI courses. I'm happy to ask the organizers here to share some of that with you guys, like, so you can take a look at that. There's like 5 or 6 courses that I recommend. One of them is about agentic AI. Actually, we have a LinkedIn Live event tomorrow. Feel free to come in. The instructors are actually hosting a free event. If you go to my LinkedIn, it should be one of the posts. There's another one that one of the Google product manager has, about, again, how to build this project. Most of these are around like how to get started. Some fundamentals, how to build your first few projects. Marilee has another one. So happy to share that list, and you all get discounts if anyone wants to buy that.
Hi, everyone. I'm Philippe Szymański, and believe it or not, I've been in product 20 years, so I've seen it. I thought I saw it all, but every few years something new comes around, which is a lot of the fun. One of the things that I really miss, and I'm really curious if it's coming back, is actually being able to be in the office, and I may be at the VP level, but nonetheless, I just love the whiteboard and having that debate of engineers, designers, the marketing team, the sales team, and put together a strategy and execute with them. Is that coming back, or are we still stuck on a Zoom call where we're just looking at the screen?
It's very much so coming back. I would say 9 times out of 10, there is some in office, whether it's 3 days a week or a couple of days a week here and there. At the very minimum, it's co-location. Like if this company's in the Bay Area, we want this person in the Bay Area. The earlier you go, the more in-office, in-person time you're going to have. It's the reality of it. Even like larger growth stage companies, public companies that have return to office mandates, they tend to be, depending on what company it is, they tend to be a little more flexible and people go in and out. So you may not get the same amount of in-person time you'll want. You'll have an office to go to and people will putter in and out. But yes, if you are seed, Series A, Series B, Series C stage company, very high likelihood you are in person at least a couple of days a week. The earlier you are, the more days a week you are in the office that I found.
Awesome. That's so encouraging.
Who else had a question? Oh.
Thanks a lot. This was really informative, and it's really good that you're doing this and paying it forward. So thank you. My question was about, you mentioned that job searches are taking 6, 12, sometimes 18 months. So how does that, how do companies look at that? And what are some ways that you've seen candidates tackle that or mitigate that?
I think it depends what you're looking for. If you're talking about like a VP level, a CC level position, frankly, if you're searching for 18 months, like the honest truth is it will start to work against you. The question will become, why have you not found a role? And is it like a you thing or like you're being too picky or whatever it is? So if you're at the 18-month mark, 24-month mark, you might need to reevaluate like what's in front of you and what's realistic at this point for you to get. Maybe it's not the top job at that specific size and stage of company you're looking for. Maybe you go work for an world-class CPA as a number 2, or whatever iteration of that is. 6 months is no big deal. Even a year, it's not that big of a deal either. once you get to 18, 24 months, that's when it becomes a little bit of a question mark and yellow flag. And frankly, especially the domain you're thinking of. If you're talking about trying to go in AI where things are changing every month, it feels like 18 months is an eternity now. So you just be very, very mindful. So if you're in your search, you're 6 months in, you're in several processes, you're good. If you're a year in, you're about to touch, 18 months and you don't have a lot of prospects, you got to quickly reevaluate what you're going after. Is that realistic for this cycle? Think about the next cycle. Maybe you get in the next one. This one, you probably just need to get a role, stick in that role. Maybe it's not the exact one you're looking for, but it's good enough to get you to the next one.
Yeah, I would like to comment on that a little bit too. So I was stressing earlier the candidate market fit. If folks have been in their search for their next role for that long, I would think that they probably have, either they've changed their candidate market fit, because they could have done that, did it for 6 months and said, oh, this doesn't fit, let me switch it again. And so that's how you might have wound up at 18 months. But to get really serious about that candidate market fit, who are you to the market? And if you believe you are something that the market doesn't see you as, and you're only gonna accept what you believe you are, and not actually take that feedback from the market and iterate, then that could be the sticking challenge for you. The other piece is Phil Terry just today wrote